Hello, I'm Alderwoman Sheila Finlayson, and welcome to our Annapolis. I am very pleased today to be joined by two members of the Kunta Kinte Alex Haley Foundation, Dr. Patsy Blackshear, who's president of the foundation, and Dr. Vivian Gist-Spencer, who is secretary of the foundation. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you. It's
So,
wonderful to be here.
well, I'm glad to have you. So tell us a little bit about the foundation. What do you do?
Well, the foundation is an organization that's vested in the community. What we do is promote Alex Haley's vision of universal world that focus on legacy and the importance of sharing family history. And so we do a lot of different programs and activities that promote that concept. We run a genealogy resource center. We go into communities and we archive communities to maintain the record of that community for history. We provide roots camps. These are genealogy camps for young people and actually for seniors as well. And we've even had conferences on genealogy that include both the grandparents and grandchildren. So things that focus on promoting history of families, sharing legacies, and genealogy.
Well, I guess we have to go back to the beginning. 1767
Yes.
is when Kunta Kinte arrived in the city of Annapolis.
On the Lord Ligonier.
On the Lord Ligonier, the name of the ship,
Yes.
and was enslaved here. And then fast forward to Alex Haley's vision of writing that story.
Yes.
And for anyone who visits Annapolis, our city dock has what I consider three different monuments, tributes to Alex Haley and Kunta Kinte's arrival, as well as the significance of the city of Annapolis in the slave trade. From the monument of Alex sitting there with children at his feet, to the story wall, to the compass rose across the street in front of the market house. So Annapolis has had a presence of Kunta Kinte, Alex Haley, and now the awesome foundation that's created to continue the legacy and the recording of the history that was begun. And we all know the book Roots that was written by Alex Haley and the, 14-hour mini-series that followed. And so
The first miniseries. in
the
fact.
first mini-series, because it's
right.
been redone, absolutely.
That's right.
And so what your foundation is doing, I believe, is to continue into a new millennium, if you will have it, of that perpetuating our history.
Yes.
First of all, learning our history and then perpetuating it.
That's true, and it all evolved from Alex Haley's book, Roots, and from that, the foundation was instrumental in getting the funding and the concept and actually having that memorial erected. And so the story wall that you mentioned, quotes from that story wall come from the book's Roots. And when you go over to the compass rose, the concept there is that if you are standing in the center and look in any particular direction, you can find the home of your ancestors. And there's a information kiosk there that speaks to the story of Kunta Kinte and his arrival on the city docks.
Well, it is a significant piece of the historical and the tourist type atmosphere in downtown Annapolis, but most people don't know the real story behind it.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is to continue, as I said, to perpetuate the history and the need for sharing our history in any number of avenues.
That's correct.
Because now you are moving into a different phase, let's say, because you are focusing on the Bates Center.
Yeah, yeah.
And what was our African American high school for all of Anne Arundel County. So tell us about this project, the Center of Excellence, Memories of Bates Teachers.
Well, that's what Bates was. It was a center of excellence because it had some of the best teachers available. You know, in early years of our educational experience, a lot of teachers didn't even finish high school, but they taught. Or maybe they just barely got a college degree and they taught. We had teachers at Bates, many of whom had master's degrees and who had taught at universities before they came here. Some even were college graduates and had gone to the military and had a broad range of experience, and then they came back and they taught. So it was a center of excellence, but it was a center of excellence because of the teachers and the teachers in partnership with the parents in the community. So it was a village helping to educate.
Truly a village raising the children.
Yes.
Bates has had a significant role in our community since the early 30s. And many people know the Bates Heritage Center only because of the senior center in the rear of the building, or the senior housing in what were the classrooms, or the Bates Legacy Center, which is the heritage historical piece, or the Boys and Girls Club. But that didn't come until 2005, after 26 years of working to redevelop that building. But prior to that, prior to 1966, that was, as I mentioned, the only high school for African Americans in all of Anne Arundel County.
It was the mighty Bates High School.
It was the mighty Bates.
That's right.
An interesting thing is that I'm not local to this area. I'm originally from Chicago, and I came to this area in about 1980. And I'm a teacher. I was a teacher. I'm retired. I was a teacher. Severna Park Senior High School, and then Anne Arundel Community College. And within my life here in Annapolis, I began meeting a variety of people, and people in a variety of different areas. For instance, I'm interested in theater, and I got involved with a group of people who were also interested in theater, and they were involved in an organization called Ebo Arts. And I met some wonderful people there, and I've come to find out that so many of the people that I met that were very important in terms of what made the Black community important here in Annapolis were these teachers from this high school called Bates. And it was my opportunity then, once I hooked up with Patsy and the rest of the Alex Haley Kunta Kinte Foundation, and we began working on this project, to find out that these teachers all came from this one high school. And for me, the idea of there being only one high school for all of the African American students within all of Anne Arundel County for those years between 1933 and 1966 was remarkable. And I had met some of these people, and they were stunning. And so I was able, through this event, to find out more about them, more about their history, and what made Bates the center of excellence that that everyone will get a chance to see.
Yeah. And when Vivian talks about the only high school for African Americans in the county, as far north as Brooklyn Park, the children rode buses and traveled to Bates.
And in many cases, they did not have bus transportation.
Not until 10 years after
Absolutely.
the school opened did they have bus transportation. And they had to get there any way they could. So the students in the first 10 years or so were primarily students in the city unless they could get here. And as far south as Friendship, they came to Bates. All the African American students who went to high school in the county, they went to Bates. And you're right, they did not initially have transportation.
And I've learned very recently that students came from Baltimore City and Howard County. And it was those very same teachers who provided transportation. Because if they lived in the communities, they brought the kids with them.
That's true. The stories about transportation are just amazing when you talk to the teachers. And we had an opportunity to interview 15 teachers, former teachers in their 80s and 90s who taught at Bates. And a lot of them, they were traveling in. They were traveling in. There were some teachers, of course, who came from the community. They were students at Bates. They went off and they went to college, and they came back and they were teachers at Bates. So I mean, it was like this was their community.
And we have to be conscious of the fact that this was a time when African Americans, the education of African Americans was not a priority. You know, so if we didn't educate our own, it would not occur.
That's true.
And our communities were truly the village that raised up all of the residents of that community. And so, yes, the teachers were your teachers, but they were your friends. You saw them at church, and you dare not do anything wrong because they were the disciplinarians also.
Oh, did we hear those type of stories?
Definitely. We heard those kinds of stories where, you know, teachers would, it was because the school was the hub of the community. It reached out into every area, and these teachers reached out into every area. And as one teacher said, that there was no excuse for not having excellence. You know, there was no excuse for being non-performance. Okay.
If a child had a problem, it was a problem that was shared with the parents and the children, all working together. So it was a village working together to make sure that no matter the performance capability of the students, all students had this as a learning center so that they could move forward to their next stages in life, whether it was onto college, onto some special career, or onto some work effort. The Bates was designed to make sure that all the students were successful.
So failure was not an option.
Absolutely, that's it.
Teachers told us that.
Yeah.
Failure was not an option.
And the teachers, you'll hear so many stories of teachers who were so creative, who could just do anything to get that lesson together that every student could understand and be helped and learn through. They would just spare no expense, and they would go any distance to make sure that every student in that classroom, no matter his or her level, was going to get the education that was needed. And that was their motive, constantly.
We had an opportunity to interview 2 students, former students of Bates, although the focus was the teacher. And we wanted to just get their impression of the teachers who helped them. And these former students, you know, they have a little age on them, as I do. So
Don't we all?
But this gentleman, he talks about how to this day he can remember this teacher, and she would give him this outline that he used whenever he was composing something, and he shared the outline with us, and this is what he does, and what now. And then he went on and he talked about how he has 3 girls, and he can remember how this teacher looked and that teacher looked and how they carried themselves, and those were the kinds of standards that he then taught his 3 girls, because those teachers served as such a model for him.
So those lessons are still being perpetuated in the future generations. And we have to admit that during those times, they didn't have books. They didn't have textbooks, you know, and it probably wasn't until the 60s that the black schools received the funding to buy new materials, because if they got textbooks from a school system,
they were used,
they were the
torn,
ones
and
that
old.
were left over
Yes.
or already used, and you know, by the predominantly white schools.
Yeah.
And so they got whatever was left over.
That's right.
And the teachers made do.
As Vivian said, the teachers were the curriculum. They made the curriculum because what they had in terms of resources were limited. and they went over and beyond, not only with transporting students, as you mentioned, but with purchasing materials, with taking students home, and keeping them at the end of the day to work with them, giving parents lessons and things that they can do to help that student, are some of the examples that the teacher shared with us.
It was so, education was so personal that as an educator myself, I mean, I'm just astounded. Being an educator in Chicago, in the Chicago public school system, as well as down here, the personal quality of the education is just, it's just astounding to me. Each one of the teachers with whom we spoke, everything meant, the education meant everything to them personally. Some of the teachers remember students' names. For instance, Nancy Gist. She was able to just tell just name after name after name of students, and not only students that she taught, but also the students that she went to school with as well, who were all a part, and they were all a part of the same school, Bates.
You know,
Generations. Generations.
One teacher told the story about a conversation he had with his wife, and the wife worked in retail, and so some of her colleagues said to her, "How do you know so many people? You seem to know everybody." And she said, "I went to Bates, and these people that I know, they either went to Bates, or their siblings went to Bates, or their uncles and aunts and cousins went to Bates. We all went to Bates, so they know everybody." That was a lesson for me too, because like Vivian, I'm a transplant to this area, and I used to wonder why all these people knew everybody. I said, "What's wrong with me? I don't know all these people." It was because they all went to Bates. Yeah.
And I have to say, some of my colleagues say that I'm related to everybody in Annapolis because likewise, you know, I went to Bates in 1966, the very year that it closed, but I went back and taught there, and I taught with some of the very teachers that you're going to be talking about in your documentary. And there's no question their commitment to education was sound. I mean, overwhelmingly so. Failure, again, was not an option.
It was not an option. It was not an option.
Was not an option.
So the foundation embraced this project because, again, we look at promoting, sharing, and capturing the history and the legacy of the African American contribution in this area. And we have a genealogy research center so people can come and do research on their own families. But we've done a number of different programs and activities that focus on capturing the history. And in one of our board meetings, one of the board members, Sharon Martin, in fact said, "You know, we ought to really look at Bates." I said, "You know, you're right." And we started talking about Bates and how we need to capture the history of Bates. And that's how it happened.
So tell us a little bit more specifically now about the project. You're interviewing teachers. How many teachers were you able to find, and how did that go?
We interviewed 15 teachers, and those are all the teachers in this area. Actually, one came from North Carolina.
Right.
So there are about 2 in this area that we could not get, but one had to do with age limitations that made it difficult. Although some of the teachers that we interviewed were 91, 92, 93. So we interviewed 15 teachers, and this has been our life.
Over the course of...
Has been our life.
Oh, yes. Over the course of the interviews were since the spring.
April, we started in April. So April through summer, we were interviewing and getting the schedules together and editing those interviews. And then in September, we actually start taking the footage from the interviews and looking at it to determine the flow of the documentary. And then after we determined the flow of the documentary, then we had to take the footage to create the documentary. And so it has been that effort.
And the other part of the process, which is so important, and we've got not only Patsy and Linda Marshall is also working on it, and Sharon Martin, and they have been gathering photographs. So it's not just an oral history. There are tons of photographs that the viewers are going to be seeing that help tell the story, and I think people are just going to be amazed because they're going to see so many of themselves when they were in their teens, and we've got just some great photographs as well as the actual film footage.
So who put this, is it the foundation who has funded this project? And sounds like done all the work to put it together.
Yeah, well, we are the production team. The foundation work group, as Vivian mentioned, Sharon Martin, Vivian, Linda Marshall, who is our genealogist, who runs our Genealogy Resource Center, and then Valerie Yancey, who is a advisory committee member.
And we can't leave out Anthony Smoot.
Yeah, so we're the production team. Our videographer is Anthony Smoot. We would be lost without him. He is just absolutely wonderful. And then our technical advisor is Chris Haley, who's done a number of film festivals and documentaries. You know that name. You know that name. So Chris is our technical advisor, looking at the documentary and helping us to modify it as we go. And then one of the former Bates students is our narrator, Carol Henson. And Carol's mom taught at Bates. So it's kind of endearing for him, I think, to be there. So the funding comes from the foundation's resources, and we get our resources through individual contributions. We welcome contributions. We get our funding through small grants that come from the city of Annapolis, from the Arts Council of Anne Arundel County, and we got special funding for this effort in a mini grant from the Four Rivers Heritage Area. The Four Rivers Heritage Area gave us a mini grant also with special funding when we created QR codes, which are video descriptors of the memorial, and we actually placed them on the memorial and we placed them on our website, so that when people go to the memorial or they go to our website, we have a virtual tour guide that gives you information about that memorial. And we love it because most memorials are static. I mean, they're stone and granite and bricks and mortar, and they're just there. But our memorial talks to you with those QR codes.
So is there a QR code on each of the are they on the story wall down on City Dock, or?
There are 4 different QR codes, okay? There's a QR code that describes the story wall, and it's down at the 4 Eastern plaque, which is the plaque that's dedicated to Leonard Blackshear, who founded the foundation. And it describes the story wall. There's a QR code there on the memorial, on the 3 pedestal descriptor behind the memorial, the statue group of Alex, and it talks about that component of the memorial. There are 2 QR codes over at the information kiosk over by the marketplace. One talks about the kiosk in the overall memorial, and one talks specifically about the compass rose.
Okay,
So,
well
4 different QR codes.
that's great to know, because I suspect many Annapolis residents aren't aware.
No, because
the
it
QR
had
codes.
been there for so long without any descriptive information, and people would ask us, can you give me something on the memorial for my class? So now they have a tour guide.
Well, that's awesome. Well, this sounds like such an exciting project, documentary. How can people see it?
Well, they can register. If you see one of these flyers around the community, you can register by following the directions here. We have a number of showings that will occur at the Wiley H. Bates Legacy Center. And I failed to mention that the Bates Legacy Center has been a partner and cooperated with us through this whole effort. When we first went to them with the idea, they were right there, allowing us to have meetings, helping us to get information to identify all the teachers. And again, the showings will be there. We have 5 public showings. And we have 5 public showings because we anticipate a number of people will be interested. But you do have to pre-register. And the reason you have to pre-register is because the seating capacity for each showing is limited. So that we don't oversubscribe, we are requiring registration for whichever session you want to go to. 5 options, a lot of opportunity to see it. If we find we are being oversubscribed, then we'll look at some other showings in March. But all of these are in February. They start February 17th, and that weekend is a Saturday and a Sunday. Then the next weekend, February 23rd, which is a Friday, and the Saturday, the 24th, and Sunday, the 25th. So you can either go to our website and
And your website?
Our website is kintehaley.org, or you can phone our telephone number, and that's a good way to get some direction by phoning our telephone number, which is 410-295-9395. 295-9395. And in fact, we have that Genealogy Resource Center available for genealogy research free, but it's only 1 day a week. So if you phone that number, we'll pick the messages up and we'll get back to you. But if you phone on a Tuesday, Lindra, who will be there, will actually help you get registered right there. And you can go online to register by going to Eventbrite and either searching for Bates Teachers, or you simply enter batesteachers.eventbrite.com. Bates Teachers, one word, .eventbrite.com.
Okay, so it sounds like you're showing 2 weekends in February.
That's correct.
The 17th and 18th, and then the following weekend,
Yes.
3 days on the following weekend, the
Yes.
23rd through the 25th, and they all are at different times.
Yes.
4:30, between 4:30 and 7:30, so it depends on the date that's selected.
Yes.
So 5 options for viewing this really important documentary. And you can register through Eventbrite, or you can go to the website, or you can call the number that you've already stated.
Yes.
But lots of options. And it's being aired at the Wiley H. Bates Legacy Center. So it's an exciting opportunity. If you're looking for events to participate in February particularly, we need to make sure that everyone is aware of these options to view this very important documentary.
Let me just add one thing. At these showings, members of the Bates Legacy Center Board will have a 30-minute or so Q&A about Bates after each showing. So we look forward to people getting a chance to raise questions and have discussions about Bates after each showing.
Well, I hope what will be included is a history of the building.
That would be probably one of the things they'll talk about.
Because most people don't realize that that awesome facility today was the high school.
Yes.
And you know, having been part of that development project, proud of it.
Yes.
And the community needs to understand how that all evolved.
Yes.
And that's taken care of in the documentary right at the very beginning. That we talk about that.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, ladies, I want to thank you for coming today and sharing with us about this very exciting project. I know the community is going to embrace it because it is such an important part of our Annapolis and Anne Arundel County history.
Yes, it is.
So again, thank you, and I invite everyone to check out the documentary on Bates Teachers. I'm Sheila Finlayson, Alderwoman. Thank you for joining us today.